Before we begin, a content warning. This episode contains discussion of murder, violence, and trauma. Listener discretion is advised. There's a sound people remember when something goes wrong in a place built on rules. It isn't an alarm. It isn't shouting. It's the quietness of the moment when something routine stops making sense. You're about to hear a story about a door that was never meant to be opened. Before we get into this episode, if you're drawn to true stories from Appalachia, the kind rooted in history, folklore, crime, and things people don't always say out loud, then you're in the right place. This is Roots and Shadows, the real Appalachia. We release new episodes every Saturday, and if you decide to stay, go ahead and press that follow button. That way these stories don't have to come looking for you. In the last episode, we took a dark walk through Appalachia as we learned about two different murders in Smith County, Virginia, two different Saturday nights, and two different women who never made it home. And the man responsible, Lem Tuggle Jr., was convicted and sentenced to death. This episode begins where Lem's story should have ended. In Appalachia, roots matter. Not the kind that grows in the ground, the ones you feel in your being. Family names, old roads, places people don't bother explaining. That's what makes what comes next harder to understand. Because when something breaks here, it doesn't just break the rules. It breaks the trust that's been buried deep for generations. Mecklenburg Correctional Center near Boydton, Virginia, was designed to feel permanent. The crown jewel of the Virginia Department of Corrections, made of concrete, steel, and far from the outside world, completed in 1977 at a cost of $20 million. That would be $167 million today. And deep inside C-Pod, housing the state's most dangerous criminals, lies Virginia's death row, sealed off and controlled with one of its most trusted safeguards, a sally port. A sally port is a controlled doorway in a prison. One door has to close before the other door is allowed to open. However, there is an override that can be activated in an emergency that allows both doors to open at the same time. On the night of May 31st, 1984, nothing felt unusual at first. Just a normal night inside Mecklenburg prison. No alarms, no panic, not until one word began moving through the prison walls. Bomb. What happened next didn't unfold all at once. It moved in precise steps. First, control of the death row pod was taken. An officer inside the cell block was overpowered, and the electronic locks on all the cells were released. Once the doors were open, the balance shifted immediately. Inmates, armed with homemade knives, shanks as they're called, took control of the unit. Responding officers were surrounded, blindfolded, their hands and legs bound as they were stripped of their uniforms. Dangerous men who were supposed to be confined to cells, now dressed as the people meant to guard them. However, not every inmate on death row took part in the escape. Surprisingly, two inmates, who had been a part of the planning meetings months before, did not join in. Guards would later testify that those two men intervened and prevented violence inside the unit, going as far as stopping other inmates from harming the guards. At least one officer would later say he owed his life to them. But the escape moved forward without him. With control of the C-Pod secured, the plan moved outward. An unknown individual called the front gate of the prison. The voice on the line sounded official, calm, routine. They told the gate operator that a bomb had been constructed inside the pod by the inmates, and that they needed a van immediately brought to the front of the prison. They also requested that both gates of the sally port be opened at the same time, so they could move the device out quickly and safely. What the inmates believed and what they were counting on was that the prison had no established protocol for a bomb threat, that there was no script for the prison staff to follow, no checklist, only fear. And when fear takes control, the rules are sometimes forgotten. The object presented as a bomb wasn't an explosive at all. No, it was just a prop, covered with a blanket to disguise it. It was merely a television. But by then, appearance was enough. The 6 inmates had put on riot helmets to hide their faces, dressed themselves in the prison guards' uniforms. They placed the television on a stretcher as they pushed it through the prison, spraying it periodically with a fire extinguisher, as to appear as if they were trying to keep something unstable from detonating. They moved through the prison carefully, methodically, but hurriedly, like men handling something that with one wrong move could kill everyone nearby. At the sally port, the moment had arrived. The last obstacle, the last remaining barrier separating the inmates from the outside world. The first gate opened on cue. And then, despite every rule, policy, and protocol meant to prevent it from happening, the second gate of the sally port opened too. The makeshift bomb was loaded into the waiting van. And on that Thursday night at 10:47 p.m., the van drove straight out of the prison. No chase, no alarms, just open roads. 6 dangerous men, each sentenced to death for killing a total of 17 people, fled the prison grounds, and one of these killers was none other than Lem Tuggle Jr. You see, in Appalachia, shadows sometimes go unnoticed. Sometimes they come through the front, looking routine and sounding like permission, the kind people don't question. That night, the shadow didn't sneak in. It walked out. Once they were beyond the prison gates, freedom didn't pull them together. It began slowly pulling them apart. Arguments ensued, and the original plans began to unravel. And before long, the escapees had split up. And by the time prison authorities understood what had truly happened, the men once confined by Virginia's state-of-the-art escape-proof prison, the men who were never meant to walk free again, were already moving in different directions. The prison may have been over 200 miles away, but the shadow never was. The news of the escape didn't arrive all at once in Smith County. It slowly filtered in. Through radio broadcasts, phone calls, and half-finished sentences. And once people understood what had truly happened, it stopped feeling distant. Because this wasn't a stranger. This was a name people knew. A name that once brought fear to a community. A name many thought they would never hear mentioned again. Things in the quiet community began to shift. Doors that had stayed unlocked for generations were now bolted and double-checked. Porch lights stayed on all night. Fathers slept on couches with their guns, watching over their families. Mothers checked on their children twice before bed. Every unfamiliar vehicle was watched with a discerning eye. Dogs barking and sounds of the night, once ignored, were now investigated. No one admitted they were afraid. They didn't have to. It was obvious in their sudden change of routine. In 1984, information moved slowly. No alerts on phones, no social media, no constant updates. You had the morning paper, the 6 o'clock news, and in between, there were silence. And in silence came something more terrifying than the shadow themselves. rumors. Sightings started pouring in to the local sheriff's office. In secluded barns, at the end of hollers, in abandoned houses, in tobacco fields, along back roads. Most of them were false. But fear doesn't need accuracy. Fear only remembers that the door opened once, and once was enough. Reports began coming in that the prison van had been located, abandoned, just across the state line into North Carolina. And with that, the fear grew. Beyond the vicinity of the prison, beyond certainty, and now beyond control. The early days of a manhunt are strange. There's motion everywhere. Sirens, roadblocks, police cars running up and down the roads. But what doesn't come is answers. Just the knowledge that someone is out there, and the quiet understanding that the system meant to hold the shadow didn't just fail. It failed where it mattered most. And now, this shadow was on the move. In the next episode, we'll follow what happens once the roads start to close in. The mistakes, the breaks they catch, the moment distance stopped feeling safe, and what it meant for people to live with the fear that what they believed was gone forever might not stay gone after all. Until then, this has been Roots and Shadows, the Real Appalachia, where every root tells a story and every shadow hides one. As a reminder, these stories are drawn from public records, historical reporting, and conversations passed down through families, neighbors, and memory. Some names have been changed, and where the written record goes quiet, details have been carefully dramatized for storytelling.